U.S. President Donald Trump said this afternoon that economy-wide tariffs on Canadian goods are in fact coming tomorrow, and now all of Canada is waiting to see if he actually goes through with the threat. Mr. Trump's month-long pause on 25% across-the-board tariffs and a 10% levy on Canadian energy is set to end Tuesday. Now, the federal government has beefed up border security, and Canadian leaders have tried to make a diplomatic push in Washington to try and stop any possible tariffs. But one thing is for sure, if the tariffs do go through, the impact will be significant. Economist Dr. Moshe Lander joined us earlier today to explain the impact of tariffs on the Canadian economy.
We haven't seen the tariffs come into play yet, and we've already seen economic consequences from just the threat of tariffs. GDP has been higher for the last couple of months than what was anticipated, in part because the threat of tariffs is leading producers to dump inventory into the US to avoid the tariffs. Once it's inside the US, you can't tariff it. So you're seeing a shifting of production, bringing it forward, which means that if the tariffs come into play, then it's going to add to the production cuts that are necessary on the other side of their implementation. Even if the tariffs don't come into play, what you have now is that firms are going to say, all right, we need to sit back and relax a little bit because we have to clear out the inventory. If the tariffs materialize and the consumers don't actually show up for the inventory that they've dumped into the US, then it's going to require even greater production cuts. So I don't think that there's any way that Canada is going to be able to avoid a recession at this point, even if the tariffs don't happen, because we need to rebalance out this production shifting that was going on merely on the threat of tariffs. And that could purely be the objective of this administration, is that while they want to tariff China, they want to tariff Europe, maybe they realize that tariffing Canada is not the ideal situation because of our deep integration, but they can still inflict pain on us without actually having to put the tariffs in place. It's almost like the anticipation is worse than the actual event. Think of as a child going to the dentist or getting a vaccination. Sometimes the child gets more tensed up at the thought of getting the needle or the thought of the dentist prodding around than when they actually go. Same sort of situation here, just on a much larger scale.
And joining us now is Brendan Caldwell, Director at Caldwell Securities Limited. Brendan, thank you very much for being back with us.
Well, it's good to be here. So much to talk about. I don't know why we boo the anthem though, the American anthem. We gave it to them. They won't remember it, of course, but their anthem comes from the British siege of Baltimore after the British warship sailed out of Bermuda, landed in Washington away from his dinner. They burned what became the White House, and they marched on Baltimore. And so we gave them a perfectly good anthem. They should be thanking us for it. In fact, we should probably charge a royalty on it to match the tariffs.
A nice little history lesson to get us started. I mean, with the tariff debate here, they were going to come in February, then March, then April. Now they're set to take place tomorrow. Why do you think there's been so much back and forth from the administration?
Well, because chaos is a ladder, as Littlefinger said in Game of Thrones. The president of the United States seems to thrive on keeping his enemies guessing at what he really wants. Does he really want to punish Canada because Trudeau made fun of him behind his back? Does he really want to replace income taxes with the more aggressive and historical tariffs, which is how America paid for itself for the first 100 and some odd years of its existence before income tax was invented? Does he really want this or does he really want that? I think he actually thrives on keeping people guessing. And your guess is as good as mine how an entire economy, the largest trading relationship that has ever existed in the history of the world, can all of a sudden, like that, impose tariffs where there haven't been any on everything that crosses the border. Looks like chaos to me.
Yeah, and I mean, on that note, part of the reaction has been more Canadians wanting to shop local and the conversation about interprovincial trade barriers. Do you believe we'll see any efforts towards removing those interprovincial trade barriers?
Well, I think it's a bit like the weather. Everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. So, yes, we should, but we shouldn't need the President of the United States to prompt us to do what we should be doing anyway. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they first brought in the free trade agreement under Mulroney in the 80s. And there was a cartoon where some construction workers were taking down the wall between Canada and the US. And one construction worker says to the other, because they were looking at all these vertical barriers go running north-south, he says, "What do you do about these?" We're just going to leave them here for now. So, I mean, for now has gone on 35 years since we had the first free trade agreement, more, closer to 40, I guess, between the two. And we've still done nothing about interprovincial trade barriers, either for goods or services. So either you're going to borrow from one of the fathers of the American Revolution, I think it was Ben Franklin, who said, "If we do not hang together, we shall all surely hang separately."
And on that note, I mean, how is the stock market reacting to this chaos? Do you believe it's having an impact or a large impact on Canadian companies?
Well, it's not just Canada. I mean, I don't know where it is closed, but the NASDAQ was down at least 300 points at one point today. Dow was down way more than 500 points today. Those are the American indices. So this Make America Great Again may have a downside that the president, I mean, he took as great measure of success in his first term the positive reaction that the stock market had to everything he said that he did or touched caused the stock market to go up. And indeed, there was a really good run through his presidency, and even after the short, sharp decline in the spring of 2020, it came roaring back, and he took full credit for that too. I'm not sure how much he'll be willing to take full credit for the fact that the U.S. market really does seem to be rolling over here. And America has got even bigger problems politically than the big economic problem they're creating for themselves with the Canadian relationship. I mean, the whole business with President Zelensky violates one of the oldest rules about hospitality. You don't attack your guest while he's in your house. Read Macbeth.
And so what advice are you giving investors right now?
Well, if you are new into the stock market, and we've got some clients that are coming to us brand new, we've been really dollar cost averaging their way in, because I don't know for sure the market's going to roll over. But if we invest 20 or 25% to start with, and the market goes down from here, no worries, 75, 80% of the money is still to be invested. If the market goes up from here, though, and if Mr. Trump's magic works yet again, well, if you haven't got invested even a little bit, you're just going to say, "Oh, wait, we're going to wait till it comes back down again." So I would suggest dollar cost averaging. And for younger investors that are just starting out, that's always the best way. Whatever the wars and rumors of wars that are going on, that's the way to attack it.
Now we have about 40 seconds. There's been a boost in Canadian patriotism. Is that maybe a silver lining here?
Well, to borrow from Shakespeare again, as Hamlet said to his erstwhile pals Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, "There's nothing ill but thinking makes it so." So if the Canada wants to take the message from here, if we do in fact need the American president to make Canada great again, to act as a unified country in our collective best interest, to develop other foreign trade routes, to get our energy to blue water across our continent-sized country. If we want to do those things as a coherent country, which is why we came together in the first place, if we want to live that dream out, then yes, this can be a good moment. If we want to go with regional and provincial and parochial squabblings, then we'll have lost what can be a golden opportunity.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.